Well, hello. A few weeks ago, I did a video, the first video of this type, on one of my favorite bands, and it captured quite a bit of attention and quite a lot of commentary too, which I'm really pleased about. I've got no real desire to do this for many bands because there's only a few bands that I can honestly say I've been really closely kind of interested in for a very long time. I've got a very wide record collection. There's just a selection of it behind me. But I wanted to talk, in the last video I threatened to talk about Bruce Springsteen and the A Street Band. So that's what I'm going to do today. Now, there was a time when Bruce Springsteen's music would be the go-to music almost every day for me. I first saw Springsteen in 1981, a year or so after a friend of mine lent me Darkness on the Edge of Town, and I saw Springsteen on the River Tour at Newcastle City Hall and then at Birmingham National Exhibition Centre, as was. And I've seen him on every tour since that time, bar the very last tour in the UK. I've travelled a little bit. I've seen Springsteen and the A Street Band in Paris a few times, seen them all over the UK. Worth saying that I thought that I was a really dead keen Springsteen fan. Seen him over 30 times. But I remember one time a conversation in a Paris hotel with some fellow travellers who were telling me that they'd seen him, might have been more than 100 times, and they were following the whole European tour. It made me feel a complete lightweight in comparison. So I'm dead keen about Springsteen, have been for many years, but I'm not at the extreme end of the obsessiveness, of the obsessives. So anyway, I've got a friend of mine who thinks that Springsteen is a poor man's Bob Seger. And the reason why he does that is that he believes that Springsteen is less authentic than Bob Seger. And it's interesting. Springsteen wrote this book, or published this book just a couple of years ago. And in the introduction, he says something really quite interesting, which kind of appeals to what my friend says. Just to quote a little bit here. I come from a boardwalk town where almost everything is tinged with a bit of fraud. So am I. By 20, no race car driving rebel, I was a guitar player on the streets of Asbury Park and already a member in good standing amongst those who lie in service of the truth. Artists with a small a. I held 4 clean aces. I had youth, almost a decade of hardcore bar band experience, a group of homegrown musicians who were attuned to my performance style, and a story to tell. And he goes on, and I'll just read the last little bit here. It says, in this book, it's his autobiography, I'm here to provide proof of life to that ever-elusive, never completely believable us. That is my magic trick. And like all good magic tricks, it begins with a setup. So, kind of springs, and he talks about it in this album, on the show, the Broadway show as well. There is something about Springsteen, a little bit of artifice, really. He's rather too good at playing the working class hero, and so I think that's what's in the mind of a friend of mine who thinks Bob Seger is superior. But Seger would never come up with Jungle Land, Nebraska, New York City Serenade, even Land of Hope and Dreams. I mean, there's something about Bob Seger, and I really like Bob Seger's music, but every time I hear something new from Bob Seger, I feel as though I've heard it before. All good, but maybe it's just one paste, maybe the lyrical content is pretty much the same, the vocal style's all the same. But Springsteen has really mixed it up over the years, so I think Springsteen is infinitely more superior than Bob Seger, although, as I say, I really like Seger too. Springsteen has also been very misunderstood over the years. I mean, Born in the USA is the most famous example, where this protest song against Vietnam veterans in particular being left on the scrap heap when they came home from the war. And of course, famously, Ronald Reagan tried to use Born in the USA as a campaign song, and so on. So he's kind of been misunderstood as well. So I'm maybe try and kind of address some of that as I talk through the albums. I'd also say that there's I wouldn't say there's just two types of Bruce Springsteen fan, but there is Springsteen as the crowd pleaser. So sing along a Bruce. Been to many concerts, of course, as I've already said, and there's many times where you get the audience participation. It's the great big collective sing along. That's not really what appeals to me about Springsteen. You know, even in the midst of a crowd, I feel most connected when the lyrical content and the emotion of the delivery really connects to me personally. So I find myself in huge crowds where it's like me and the artist, and I think that kind of, I'm trying to tune into what the artist is trying to say. And sure, I'll sing along now and again, but it's kind of not really my thing. One final thing I'll say before I start going on to the albums. I think he's a bit cloth-eared as Springsteen. I don't think he's got very good hearing, and probably with good reason, because some of his albums are amongst the worst produced albums ever released by a major artist. Some of them sound utterly terrible. And I'll talk a little bit about that as I go through as well. So anyway, I've got a list here of 20 Springsteen albums. And they're going to go from the least appealing, I don't really like saying worst, but maybe I will say worst, to what I think, perhaps other people will agree or disagree, I don't know. But they all, from the worst to the best. The least appealing to the most appealing. So, where do we start? The worst Springsteen album in my judgment. This one, Western Stars. Why the hell Western Stars? Now I've got more than 100, maybe 150 Bruce Springsteen bootlegs. And amongst those bootlegs, which are usually of live shows, from every tour, pretty much from the very beginning, there are bootlegs of studio outtakes. And some of those are utterly excellent, by the way. Maybe I'll say a little bit more about as we go on. But Springsteen has this habit when, and I think this must be normal for musicians, is that when he's putting together demos or run-throughs of tracks, he sings with a lack of conviction. And that's kind of, you would think that's kind of normal, really, because you'd want to save the best performance for when he's really trying to get the perfect take. So there's a lot of Springsteen demos and studio recordings where he's half committed to the vocals. And I think this is what the problem is with this album. Somehow, he's trying to, or at least his publicists are trying to convince the audience that he's got a bit of a Jimmy Webb thing going on, that he's a bit of a crooner at heart. He's just, you know, all those bellowing big vocals he had in the 1980s and the 1990s in particular, that he's not really, or he's not only that made of that, he's got these crooning abilities as well. I don't buy it. I love his voice, by the way, but this album to me sounds like a bunch of demos that they thought, I can't turn these into the E Street Band tracks for one reason or another, who knows, but I'm going to put some strings, some really mediocre string arrangements over the top of them, and I'm going to sell it as a departure from my usual style. So I really wanted to like this album. I really went through, I listened to it many, many times, and there's a few good tracks, there's no doubt about it. But to be honest with you, I just think it sounds half finished, and really quite unimpressed with that inauthenticity around his vocals, that basically, you know, demo style vocals. So that's, in my judgment, is the least favorite Springsteen album. So that was number 20. Number 19, working down from 20 to number 1, of course. Number 19 is this one, Working on a Dream. I saw this tour. Some good tracks. Outlaw Pete doesn't sound great on the album, but sounded good live. This Life, Surprise, Surprise, The Wrestler, Queen of the Supermarket. rushed, felt rushed to me. I don't know whether it came out, I can't remember whether it came out, he recorded this off the back of another tour, but it's just something I rarely pick up now. And Outlaw Pete, even though it's kind of dramatic, you know, about 8-minute job in a live context, the lyrics are rubbish. It's just, I think, what the hell is he writing about here? So anyway, that's my second least favourite Springsteen song. My third least favourite Springsteen song, it's kind of a cheat really, bloody Western Stars Mark II. It's the live album that he brought a band together, and the only reason why this is better than Working on a Dream and better than Western Stars is that he knows the camera's on him and he has to sing with a little bit more conviction. So this is better, but I still think that these are fairly average demos, and I will talk about some of these demos a little bit later in this little discussion. Right, so that was number 17. Number 18, excuse me. Number 17 is this album, Magic. Why is this so low in the list when it's got some great tracks like Magic, Last to Die, Long Walk Home, Devil's Arcade, Radio Nowhere, Gypsy Biker? Some great tracks, but the production by Brendan O'Brien, I believe, is awful. There's something about Springsteen's music and his albums, and I think we'll talk about when we'll get to The River, where that when Max Weinberg used to hit that snare drum, it had a crack to it. It was super crisp and loud. And here, when he's banging the drums, it sounds like they're covered in water. It's a splashy sound. Maybe it was produced with earbuds in mind, I don't know. And I'm not even saying that's Springsteen's music. My expectations are that it's going to be audiophile quality, not necessarily. It's just that the rhythm section, and particularly the drums, sound so awful. However, the shows on this tour were stupendous. I mean, though the side two of this album, where you got, you know, Last to Die, Long Walk Home, Devil's Arcade, superb. Great live show, but not a great album. Right, number 16. High Hopes. This is better, even though it's a bit of a mix-up of cover versions, re-recordings even. So here you've got a version of American Skin, 41 shots from the Live in New York album. Great version, by the way, as well. Fantastic version of The Ghost of Tom Joad with Tom Morello. Harry's Place is good. Just Like Firewood, Tom Morello again, not bad. Down in the Hole's good. Sounds better. Brendan O'Brien didn't produce this, and you can tell this is a really good album. So good, I bought 2 or 3 copies. This one's still in its plastic. But that's a pretty good album, but it's sitting languishing down at number 16. Let me take a Pink Floyd break. Pink Floyd tribute here. Right. So number 15. Controversial maybe. Greetings from Asbury Park. Why? It's hard to say. Some great tracks. I mean, Growing Up, or Grown Up, Blinded by the Light, Lost in the Flood, For You, The Angel, Spirit in the Night. Kind of a bit torn about putting this so low in the list, because it's just a typical. I talked about Genesis in the last video, and I talked about Trespass, their second album, where it was blatantly obvious that they were kind of starting out, just gaining some momentum. And this is a start-out album. You can tell it's not very well recorded. It's kind of folky in some sort of a way. And some of the versions that Springsteen later did on the live shows just blew these ones away. But some great tracks on here. So Springsteen's early stuff is definitely worth exploring. But I'm going to put that one low, just to be controversial. Well, not necessarily just to be controversial, just because I think there's more enjoyable albums. So, number 14. The first of 2 albums released on the same day, Lucky Town. Better Days, absolute classic. Lucky Town itself, Local Heroes, a lot of fun. If I Should Fall Behind, again, stupendous version on the Live in the New York live album. Living Proof, My Beautiful Reward. This is not with the E Street Band, of course. It's with a bunch of musicians, I believe, out in California. Sounds a lot more polished, although this is the more rugged sounding one of the two albums that came out on the same day. But it sounds good. Sounds good. Got some great tracks on it as well. So that is, I think there's a lot of time when people were lamenting the breakup of the E Street Band. People were had a little bit of a downer on these albums, this one and Human Touch. And I think with the benefit of time passing, we can enjoy this for what it is. It's a good album. By any other artist, you'd think, wow, great piece of work. Some great tracks. Better Days, absolutely love it. Right, that was number 14. Number 13, the Sega Sessions. Great tour, great album, really good. But it's a bit... Cover versions, of course, old folk songs. I feel as though he's playing around with different musicians to try and do something that's a bit novelty, that taps into his ancestry. Are hugely enjoyable. I mean, it's really great fun. But it doesn't feel like real Springsteen. I don't know whether that's a fair comment or not, but there's not a bad track on this album. Not a bad track on this album. But for some reason, it's not reached my top 10. So it's good. Definitely recommend it. The live in Dublin version of this is great as well. Yeah, really good, but not right up there. Not much else to say about it, really. Here's that other album that came out with Lucky Town, Human Touch. Why is this one slightly better? It's a slightly longer album. It's got a few more fillers on it, so which is not brilliant, by the way. But some great tracks as well. Human Touch, 57 channels. With Every Wish, Real World, Man's Job. I Wish I Were Blind. Real Man is good. Sounds great. Really fun. Great album to drive to. Slightly better than Lucky Town. Again, sounds very polished. Not very A Streety at all. And then we get Solo. Solo Springsteen. Devils and Dust. Saw him in Paris on this tour. Fantastic tour, really good. How he can hold an audience for 2 or 3 hours just on his own, playing guitar, piano, pump organ. Did a brilliant version of Suicide's Dream Baby Dream at the end to close the shows on this tour. Really good. I mean, Devils and Dust is great. All the Way Home. Reno's great. Jesus Was an Only Son. Long Time Coming. The Hitter. Matamoros Banks. Mostly acoustic, a little bit of a rhythm accompaniment here and there. Hugely atmospheric. Really great album. Really, really enjoy it. But that's sitting, if I remind myself here, at number 11. The top 10. I hope you're enjoying it so far. We never thought this was coming, because he'd split the A Street Band. He got back together. They did a show at Sony Studios, and they recorded a few tracks that came out, accompanying a DVD. And then he got together and they did the first proper album with the A Street Band back together again. And of course, this was made in the wake of 9/11. So the theme of it is about loss and companionship, and the whole idea about a city kind of rebuilding itself and rebuilding the community after a real catastrophe. Starts well, Lonesome Day, Into the Fire, Waiting on a Sunny Day. Nice track, really good track. But boy, did it go on 10, 15 minutes in the live scene and the live arena, and it outstayed its welcome. But always good. They used to always bring a little kid on stage to sing along with them. Always good. Nothing Man's Good. Empty Sky, Worlds Apart. Let's Be Friends is a bit of a weak spot there. Further on Up the Road is good. Mary's Place, You're Missing, fantastic. The Rising itself, Paradise, and My City of Ruins, which he'd premiered on a tribute concert for the victims of 9/11. really emotional shows. I mean, everybody was with him on this one. I mean, he's not a New Yorker, of course, but he's obviously spent a huge amount of time there and has a close relationship with the city. Really felt that he was singing from the heart on this one. I think as an album, in hindsight, it's probably a little bit too long. Could have dropped 2 or 3 tracks, but loads of great stuff on there. Number 10. Number 9, the 9th best album. This one. The Wildly Innocent and the E Street Shuffle. Bit too much in the horns section here, going on for my liking. Kitty's Back is good. Wild Billy's Circus Story, I haven't got my glasses on at the moment here. Incident on 57th Street, Rose Lita, kind of went on a bit too long live as well, but first saw him live on TV with a clip that was shown on the Old Grey Whistle test, which was stupendous. And then New York City Serenade. Side 2 is immaculate, and it's really, really great album. This would be the album of a career for almost any other artist, but he's done better. But that's super album, absolutely superb. Number 8, Born in the USA. You might see that there, bit of an autograph, faded autograph on the front, man. He signed this one. This was everywhere, of course. Muscle-bound Bruce. Fantastic shows. Born in the USA was awesome. I mean, the high energy on those shows is just tremendous. Downbound Train, I'm on Fire, No Surrender, Bobby Jean, My Hometown, of course, Dancing in the Dark. Almost like a greatest hits collection, really. Peak Springsteen. This is where he was the biggest in the world, probably the biggest selling artist in the world around 1984, 85, 84, I think, when this one came out. Fantastic album. Not one I go back to very often, probably because I've overplayed it over the years. And playing No Surrender at full blast with the windows down on a drive is pretty much a thrill. Really great. Really enjoy this one. Number 7, The Ghost of Tom Joad. Tickets for the shows on this were like gold dust, but I managed to get a ticket off a tout to go and see him at Birmingham Symphony Hall. And again, just held an audience just with a guitar. I don't think he even had a keyboard on that tour. I'm pretty sure he didn't. But this is, we'll come to Nebraska, as Springsteen aficionados will have already realised. It hasn't come up yet. But this is a little bit like that. Lots of stories about people who were downtrodden, fall on hard times, areas that fall on hard times, like Youngstown. Sinaloa Cowboys, about the drug trade down the US-Mexican border, the Ghost of Tom Joad itself, Straight Time, about a guy coming out of prison, across the border, Galveston Bay, really beautiful album, really, really good. That's probably the late night Springsteen album to go for. Classic. Bob Seger would never have done that. Right, number 6, Tunnel of Love. Only a bit of the E Street Band in this one. He drafted in horns on the tour. Saw him in Sheffield on this tour. Great shows as well. This is about his kind of, I think, breakup or impending breakup with his first wife. But these are, Ain't Got You, Tougher Than the Rest, Spare Parts, Cautious Man, Walk Like a Man, Tunnel of Love, Two-Faced, Brilliant Disguise, which was a hit single. That's a really personal album you get a sense of here. But this is not fist-pumping Springsteen like Born in the USA, but this is a really great effort. Really great. Right up amongst the best. Number 5, shall I say. Number 5. Unusually for Springsteen fans, I'd say number 5 was one of his later albums, Wrecking Ball. What amazing shows we experienced there. So many great albums on this one here. Great tracks on this one here. Wrecking Ball itself is really good. Land of Hope and Dreams. For years, I used to play Born to Run every time I moved into a new place and set up a hi-fi. It was always the first track I played. And then Land of Hope and Dreams came along on Live in New York City. And then the version here used recordings from live shows of Clarence Clemens' saxophone solo, and it worked absolutely brilliantly. And this is such a great sounding album as well, because Brendan O'Brien had been kicked out by that time. I don't think kicked out or fired, just not recruited for this album. But this is super high energy, sounds super big. There's no right to produce an album this good so late in his career, but absolutely tremendous. And Bob Seger's favourite, Nebraska. This was a huge disappointment when it came out for me anyway, because it came off the back of The River, and the first time I'd seen him, I was used to the big shows, expecting 3 to 4 hour shows every time I saw him. And then the next thing came out was this kind of folky effort. I thought, what a disappointment. But over the years, you realise what an absolute masterpiece this is. Every song is a great story. Nebraska, Atlantic City, of course, which they created a big band version of as well. They did the same for Johnny 99. Highway Patrolman, which was the story of a patrolman kind of letting his brother get away from a crime, crossing the border, of course. Used Cars, My Father's House, Reason to Believe. When Springsteen is dead and gone, they're going to be talking about this album, I think. They'll talk about Born to Run as well, but they're going to be talking about this album right up there, because this turned him into a really serious artist, I think. A really serious artist. Great album. Not an easy listen, but a great album. Number 3, said River. So The River. Masterpiece. Sounds a bit tinny. Turned up loud. Sounds great. So many brilliant tracks. Independence Day. I mean, opens with The Ties. That bind is absolutely superb. Little bit too many dancey sing-along of Bruce songs in here. You Can Look But You Better Not Touch, Out in the Street, Two Hearts and things like that. Not really the most appealing to me. For me, it was about The River itself. It was about Independence Day, Point Blank, Fade Away, Stolen Car, The Price You Pay, Drive All Night and Wreck on the Highway. It's kind of a Springsteen concert idea here, where he takes you through the emotional highs and lows and the sing-along stuff, but also the introspective and deeply emotional stuff as well. That's an absolute classic album. If you haven't heard Springsteen and you want a good place to start, this is probably a great place to start, because it's kind of got a bit of everything on there. So, what's going to be number 1? Well, this is number 2, Born to Run. This one's got a less faded autograph on it. I didn't know Springsteen when this came out. I remember seeing the picture. For some reason, it's obviously it's the top 2, one of the top 2 albums in my judgment, but it's probably right up there, number 1 for most people, because it's got Born to Run on it. But it's also got Jungle Land, and it's got Thunder Road, 10th Avenue Freeze Out. I don't put it number 1 because I think Night is a little bit throwaway. Backstreets goes on too long. She's the One, kind of Bo Diddley rhythm. Doesn't seem that original to me. Meaning Across the River is beautiful, really good. Great storytelling. Sounds massive. I love it. Great album. There's not much more to say about that, but as I've already said, Born to Run was my go-to song for years and years and years, and it's still right up there. It's such an exciting way to see Springsteen's play Born to Run band version live. It's an otherworldly experience. It's the thrill of it is fantastic. So that leaves only one album as the number 1. Darkness on the Edge of Town. Talked about Springsteen as artifice, inauthentic. He might be inauthentic. He might be playing a role here. I don't know. Maybe he is. But he plays it so convincingly with these stories of working class people, couples, men, young people living very simple lives. And I think this took a long time to record. Judging by the bootlegs that I've heard, there are many, many tracks. Come to that in a second. But here you've got classic after classic. Badlands, Adam Raised a Cane, Racing in the Street, Promised Land, Prove It All Night, and of course the title track. A really, really intense, claustrophobic album. But it is the one that I think is just out in front, above Born to Run, as the one that's caught me most emotionally. Saw a bit of myself and my neighbourhood in this album, there's no doubt about it. But yeah, absolute classic. So that's Springsteen's top 20 albums. A bit of a rush through there. I don't know how long this video has taken to record so far. Say one or two other things before I'm done. A couple of box sets that are worth checking out. The Born to Run, what is that, the 30th anniversary remaster. Got a great live DVD on that one. In that one, it's good. Not the best box set. Yeah. Definitely worth hearing though. This one is kind of better, but a disappointment. It's reported, I mean, I've heard just about every track from these sessions, but it was reported that he actually went back and re-recorded some of the vocals on these old studio outtakes, which I think is a big mistake because his voice had changed a bit. And I don't know whether it was just my expectations, but after listening to the bootlegs for years and years and years, I expected that really austere sound to be replicated here, but there's just somehow a little bit too much polish in this one to make it essential. So I wouldn't go for that necessarily. I would go to the original album. This, I think, is the best box set that Springsteen did, which is the Tracks box set. 4 CDs covering every period apart from the very beginning of his career. Lots of stuff from the 90s here that never made it onto albums. Some beautiful, beautiful tracks. Really great album. That's a must-have album if you're a Springsteen fan. In terms of live albums, well, you've got Live 1975 to 85 is absolutely essential because that was something that all Springsteen fans were waiting for a very long time, and he did not disappoint. 5-album box set, it's great. But Live in New York City is superb. It's got amazing versions of Youngstown, The River, and of course Land of Hope and Dreams, the live version, which has got the best scream in rock and roll on it. Often people think that's Roger Daltrey at the end of Won't Get Fooled Again on Who's Next. But Springsteen's scream at the end of Land of Hope and Dreams is way, way more animal. Absolutely superb. The unplugged one where he bottled it and decided he was going to bring a band along anyway is also worth hearing as well, but is not very essential. And Live in Dublin by on the Sega Sessions tour is only worth getting if you really, really love the Sega Sessions album, because that's a pretty ramshackled album in itself. So the live show doesn't really add that much to it. But, all good nevertheless. So that's Springsteen. I hope that's been interesting, and I hope that you've enjoyed it, and I hope that it'll raise 1 or 2 questions and some comments. Feel free to comment if you wish. I've got a couple of other artists in mind. I'm going to run out of them pretty quickly before I have to stop doing these videos, but it's been fun doing this one. I hope it's been, as I say, interesting and entertaining for everybody who's been watching it. So thanks for tuning in, and might see you again.